So the first one that we did that wasn't like my plan was place was the one with Anthony Lee. But I remember the one after that where it's like, oh, we got to do that again. Um, but I didn't know anything. Um, I didn't know anything about art. I didn't know any artists, right? Like my whole life up to that point had been basically basketball. One thing that I didn't learn until later was, you don't have to necessarily close your interests off because you think basketball players aren't artists or artists aren't basketball players. So, but that said, I had to kind of try to figure out who artists might be to work with. And thankfully, there's a guy named Elliot Perry uh, working for the Memphis Grizzlies who played in the league and was a big art collector and had recently had a show of his artworks at the University of Memphis. And so I went to look at the show of artists that Elliot supported or works he owned, and there was an artist from Chicago, a lady named Nina Chanel Abney, who like work just kind of blew me away and was like, oh, like that would look fantastic on the basketball court. It's a lot of like shapes and colors. So I reached out to Nina, and she was gracious enough to come up with an idea for a basketball court with us. And I think that was at Chickasaw Heritage Park in Memphis. I think that was the first court that we did where I actually reached out to the artist in advance with the idea of we should put art on a basketball court. And I think, since and to my knowledge, that's the first time that was done in a public park ever. And since that time, the idea has grown quite a lot, and other groups other than Project Backboard have done it. And Nina is fantastic, a powerhouse of an artist, just an amazing woman. So we were like kind of lucky. I was like very lucky to have the opportunity to work with her.
I want to ask you this, Dan, because just in terms of the nuts and bolts behind Project Backboard, because anytime you do non for profit, fundraising and trying to get supporters and people to believe in the dream and the vision, um, how has that been for you guys? Because because I've run foundations, I understand that concept, that component, and the toughest thing has always been is trying to one, get people to believe in what you're doing, no matter how great the cause is. Still got to
Yeah,
get people to believe in it. And then the other thing is, like with everything, now you're looking for folks to volunteer, in a sense, a lot of their time, resources, and things of that nature. How has that been for you guys, especially early on?
yeah.
You saying you want to refurbish inner city playgrounds?
Yeah, so I started Project Backboard thinking this is just something I was going to do in Memphis, right? Thinking that it's just something I was going to paint all the lines on the basketball courts. And then there was going to be this one court that had Nina's artwork on it. And that was kind of going to be the end of Project Backboard. Um, and we had ended up, so my family, my wife is from the area I'm in now, Southern California. And so both my boys were born in Memphis, and we kind of had an idea that eventually we were going to leave Memphis and go to the West Coast. So initially, I didn't go into it thinking it was going to be something that happened forever. Certainly, it's not something that's going to be happening for 10 years. And when we moved, I was doing Project Backboard, but it was not something I was doing. We were doing one or two courts a year for the first 2 or 3 years after leaving Memphis. It wasn't like an active thing. It was just something that, like, I loved. I did it because I loved outdoor basketball, and I wanted others to love and experience outdoor basketball. Um, but yeah, I think we got lucky in like we were doing it sort of at the start of the social media age, and I think the fact that it was visually so big and visually. You guys have been on the court, like the hoop team's court. You know, when you walk into the space, the color is just kind of like it's large, right? It's like you kind of feel the energy and the color in a way, and so I think that was helpful to kind of be doing it in the era where Instagram was sort of taking off and people were excited about things that were visual this way. But so when we started doing it, I didn't have a drone, I didn't have any aerial photos, so it wasn't done for the purpose of social media. It just kind of happened to kind of hit, I think, in the right way. And so the way I talk to people about it now is, look, if you renovate a basketball court, and it looks the same as it did before, it becomes a better place to play. but you're sort of just making it for the existing users. It's going to be the same people hooping on it. It's just they got a better place to hoop now. Whereas if you can switch it up, make it the Hoop Dreams court, and all of a sudden people are excited to come from different parts of the city. You add some extra meaning to it. Maybe people who weren't playing before decide to come out. People from different neighborhoods, like you have an opportunity to kind of change the environment and change the people who use it in a different way. And another unexpected thing that I think helped was I noticed after we did these initial courts that with the color on them, that we were getting more families and more young women coming out
Mm.
using the spaces. And so I think that kind of helped like tell that story and kind of make it seem like something that was useful, right? Because people are looking for ways like pu- public parks departments invest tons of money in public parks, like, and then the relative expense of adding a design to the court um, is not enormous. And so, if that's what happens to get more and different users into the park, it can be seen as a pretty good investment. Ultimately, people love basketball and want to be a part of basketball. And I would say half our funds is more traditional nonprofit funds, half our funding is from corporate partners, everything from sneaker brands to makeup brands. So we've worked with lots of different companies who want to give back, but they want to do it in a way that kind of gets to communities. And the thing about basketball courts, for me, and I think for a lot of people, like if you think about public parks as the heart of the community, like the basketball courts is kind of like the heartbeat, right? So even if you're not playing, you're probably hanging out near the court and you kind of want to see what's happening. And so I think it just touched on a lot of things at the right time that made it something that was bigger than what I expected.
Now, give us the layout for that, because in my mind, I'm thinking like you go to a city. That's a lot of public parks. That's a lot. How do you decide one what neighborhood is going to get it, and then you go in that neighborhood? How do you decide where you're going to put it at?
Yeah, so they happen a couple different ways. We work closely with parks departments that help identify areas of need, but we primarily work in public parks, and so working with the government, you kind of we need their permission to work. So part of it is where they think it'll work, and then it's trying to connect with community members or people in the basketball world in that city about where is the spots that make the most sense. And we started doing a contest a couple years ago. We're in our third year now. It's called Every Court Has a Story. And so what Every Court Has a Story is we're asking people um, to submit short videos, 60 to 120 seconds, saying why their court is important to their community. And it doesn't have to be fancy videos, doesn't have to be fancy editing. Just tell us why this court's important, why it has meaning that someone who's not from the city might not understand unless they're in it. And so um, that actually the third round video submissions are going live in March. And I encourage anybody like who's got a court in their community that they feel like is important um, to their community to submit and need some additional love to submit a video. And don't be like intimidated by it being complicated. The simplest videos have won in the past. And so now like we've got a list of when I have a funder interested in renovating the court and they say, hey, we want to renovate a court in Chicago, right? I can say, well, Garfield Park and Arthur Agee and Will Gates, those are the people to talk to if you want to find a court that has the most meaning. And then, and then talk to the parks department, say, hey, we talked to Arthur. He thinks this court would be great. They give their approval and then it, moves forward um, from there.
Have you all done more than one parks in the same city?
We have, yes, we've done in a few different cities, multiple parks. I think like, like you guys are talking about all these parks is like the good or unfortunate truth is that most cities have a lot of public parks that could use renovation. A lot of public parks are underfunded, and a lot of courts have deferred maintenance. So there's not just one court that needs attention in most places. Um, we've done a couple in New York. New York probably has the most. Atlanta, Chicago, we did the one outdoor court, the Hoop Dreams court. We did an indoor gym in Pilsen a
Oh,
while back. The Union League Boys and Girls Club. Beautiful court with a Chicago artist named Carlos Roland. We try to spread it out. Try to get to different communities, but there's some communities where there's just a lot of courts and there's a big basketball. Basketball is meaningful, and so try to bring the dollars to it.